The Critical Mind Revolution. How to Master Your Thinking in 90 Days. 5 Essential Strategies for Lasting Transformation. Prologue. The moment everything changed. Rain tapped gently against the coffee shop window as I sat observing the bustling city life outside. Steam rose from my third cup of coffee, creating swirling patterns that seemed to mirror the thoughts spinning in my mind. After 15 years as a life coach and mentor, I had witnessed countless individuals struggling with the same fundamental questions that once plagued my own journey. What do I really want? Am I making the right choices? Why does everyone else seem to have it figured out? The faces and stories of those I've helped flash through my memory. There's Sarah, the brilliant marketing executive who built what others would call a successful career, yet feels an inexplicable emptiness in her achievements. Mike, the recent graduate whose endless possibilities have become a paralyzing maze of what-ifs. And Lisa, the mother of 2 whose entrepreneurial dreams remain trapped in the someday that never seems to arrive. Through their stories and hundreds more like them, I've discovered that our greatest obstacle isn't a lack of opportunities or resources. It's our thinking patterns. We've been taught to think critically about academic problems and business strategies, but somehow missed learning how to apply these same powerful tools to our personal lives. The world has become increasingly complex, yet our approach to life's major decisions often remains surprisingly simple. We rely on impulse, emotion, or others' expectations to guide us. Then we wonder why we feel unfulfilled, stuck, or consistently second-guess our choices. This realization became crystal clear one evening during a session with James, a successful attorney who seemed to have everything society deemed valuable: prestigious career, comfortable lifestyle, respectable status. Yet there he sat, shoulders slumped, confessing that he couldn't remember the last time he felt truly alive. "I've spent 20 years building someone else's dream," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I followed all the rules, made all the right choices, but I never stopped to question if this was what I actually wanted." James's story isn't unique. It reflects a broader struggle in our society: the gap between knowing what we're supposed to want and understanding what truly fulfills us. This gap exists not because we're incapable of making better choices, but because we lack the critical thinking framework to navigate personal decisions with the same rigor we apply to professional ones. This book emerged from witnessing this pattern repeat itself countless times. It's not another collection of motivational quotes or generic advice about following your dreams. Instead, it's a practical guide to developing and applying critical thinking skills specifically for personal growth and life decisions. Throughout these pages, we'll explore how to cut through the noise of competing advice and social expectations. You'll learn frameworks for evaluating choices, tools for maintaining momentum, and strategies for turning abstract dreams into actionable plans. Most importantly, you'll develop the mental models needed to make decisions aligned with your authentic self. The journey ahead isn't about eliminating uncertainty. That's neither possible nor desirable. Rather, it's about developing the tools to make thoughtful decisions despite uncertainty, to take action despite fear, and to maintain progress despite setbacks. Each chapter builds upon the previous one, offering real-world examples, practical exercises, and implementation strategies. You'll meet people who've faced challenges similar to yours and learn how they applied critical thinking to transform their situations. Their stories will show you that change is possible, not through dramatic gestures or revolutionary insights, but through the consistent application of better thinking patterns. As you begin this journey, I encourage you to approach these pages with curiosity and openness. Keep a journal nearby. Engage with the exercises. Apply the concepts to your specific situation. The real value comes not from passive reading, but from active engagement with the material. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Thousands of others are walking similar paths, asking similar questions, facing similar challenges. What sets apart those who create meaningful change isn't inherent ability or luck. It's the willingness to develop and apply critical thinking skills to their personal growth journey. The power to transform your life has always been within you, in the way you think, analyze, and make decisions. Now is the time to harness that power through critical thinking. Welcome to your journey of transformation. Let's begin this exploration together, one thought at a time. Chapter 1: Awakening the Critical Mind. The morning light filtered through my office windows, casting long shadows across the worn leather chairs where I'd heard countless stories of struggle and transformation. Maria sat across from me, unconsciously shredding a tissue into tiny pieces that fell like snow onto her dark skirt. At 35, she had what many would consider a successful life: a stable career in marketing, a comfortable apartment in the city, and a wide circle of friends. Yet here she was, fighting back tears as she voiced a frustration I'd heard echoing through many conversations before. "I've done everything right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've read every self-help book. I've made vision boards. I've tried meditation. I've followed all the advice about finding your passion and living your best life. But I still feel lost. Everyone keeps saying, follow your passion. But what if you don't know what your passion is? What if you've spent so long doing what you're supposed to do that you can't even hear your own voice anymore?" Maria's words struck a chord that resonated with the stories of countless others who had sat in that same chair. There was James, the corporate lawyer who had climbed the ladder of success only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. Sarah, the talented artist who had chosen a practical career in accounting and now spent her evenings staring at her untouched paintbrushes. Michael, the recent graduate paralyzed by the weight of possibility, afraid that one wrong move would derail his entire future. Their stories, while unique in detail, shared a common thread. They had never learned how to think critically about their own lives. They had developed impressive analytical skills for their professional work, examining market trends, analyzing legal precedents, or evaluating financial statements. But when it came to personal decisions, they relied primarily on emotion, intuition, or the expectations of others. To understand why this happens, let's take a journey into the human mind. Imagine you're standing in front of your closet tomorrow morning, deciding what to wear. This seemingly simple decision activates multiple layers of thinking. Practical considerations: what's the weather? What meetings do I have? Emotional factors: how do I want to feel today? And social considerations: what will others think? Now multiply this complexity by 1,000 when facing life's bigger decisions. I asked Maria to walk me through her thought process regarding her career satisfaction. As she spoke, a complex web of thoughts emerged. She worried about financial stability, a concern rooted in memories of her parents' financial struggles during her childhood. She felt pressure to maintain her current lifestyle, influenced by social media images of what success should look like. She harbored a secret dream of becoming a writer, but dismissed it as impractical based on stories she'd heard about struggling artists. "Let's try something," I suggested, pulling out a blank sheet of paper. "Instead of trying to figure out what you want, let's first understand how you think about what you want." I asked her to recall a recent decision she'd made, any decision, and walk me through her thought process. She chose her recent choice to turn down a promotion at work. "Well," she began, "it would have meant more money, which I thought I should want. Everyone kept telling me I'd be crazy to turn it down. But something felt off about it." "What do you mean by I should want?" I asked. This simple question opened a flood of realizations. Maria began to recognize how many of her choices were guided by external shoulds rather than internal desires. The promotion would have meant longer hours, more stress, and less time for the writing workshop she'd secretly been wanting to try. This is where critical thinking begins, not with finding answers, but with questioning our questions. It's about developing awareness of the mental frameworks we use to make decisions. Consider Tom, another client who came to me struggling with a similar disconnect between his actions and desires. Tom was a successful software engineer who spent his weekends helping his friends with their technology problems. When I asked him why he enjoyed this, his face lit up as he described the satisfaction of solving problems and helping others. Yet when I suggested he might consider a career shift toward technology education or consulting, his immediate response was, "Oh, I could never do that." "Why not?" I asked. "Well, I've already invested so much in my current career path. It would be irresponsible to change now." This response reveals a common thinking trap: the sunk cost fallacy. Tom was making decisions based on past investments rather than future possibilities. When we explored this further, he realized this pattern appeared in other areas of his life too. Staying in unfulfilling relationships because of time invested, keeping clothes he never wore because they were expensive, continuing projects that no longer serve their purpose. Critical thinking isn't about being critical in a negative sense. Instead, it's about developing a structured approach to understanding ourselves and the world around us. Think of it as turning on a light in a dim room. Suddenly, you can see details that were always there but hidden in shadow. Let's look at another example. Rebecca, a talented musician, came to me struggling with performance anxiety. Her initial statement was, "I get nervous because I'm not good enough." Through our work together, we broke this thought pattern down into its components. Fact: she experienced physical symptoms of nervousness before performances. Interpretation: these symptoms meant she wasn't good enough. Hidden assumption: confident performers don't get nervous. Unexamined belief: nervousness indicates lack of skill. By examining each element separately, Rebecca discovered that many successful performers experience nervousness. They just interpret it differently. Some even view it as excitement or proof that they care about their performance. This realization didn't immediately cure her anxiety, but it gave her a new framework for understanding and working with it. This brings us to another crucial aspect of critical thinking: distinguishing between facts and interpretations. Facts are objective, verifiable statements. Interpretations are the meanings we assign to those facts. When Maria examined her career situation through this lens, new insights emerged. The fact that she had a stable job in marketing wasn't inherently good or bad. It was her interpretation that created satisfaction or dissatisfaction. The fact that she enjoyed writing didn't automatically mean she had to quit her job and become a full-time author. These revelations opened up possibilities she hadn't considered before, like starting a blog about marketing or incorporating more creative writing into her current role. The process of developing critical thinking skills isn't linear. It's more like tending a garden. You prepare the soil, develop awareness, plant seeds, learn new thinking tools, nurture growth, practice regularly, and remain patient as new insights take root. One particularly powerful moment came when Maria realized she had been asking herself the wrong question. Instead of, "What should I do with my life?" she began asking, "What kind of life would allow me to express all parts of myself?" This shift in questioning led to a cascade of new thoughts and possibilities. She started exploring ways to integrate her love of writing into her current life rather than viewing it as an all-or-nothing career change. She began attending writing workshops on weekends, started a blog about marketing and creativity, and even proposed a new content strategy at work that allowed her to use more of her writing skills. As our session drew to a close, Maria looked at the tissue pieces scattered on her skirt and laughed. "I've spent so much time trying to find answers," she said, "when I really needed to learn how to think about the questions." This is the foundation of critical thinking, not just accepting our thoughts at face value, but learning to examine them with curiosity and rigor. It's about developing the mental tools to recognize our thought patterns, question our assumptions, evaluate evidence, consider alternatives, and make reasoned decisions. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to begin your own journey of awareness. Tonight, before you go to bed, take a moment to reflect on a decision you're currently facing. Don't try to solve it yet. Just notice the thoughts that arise around it. What assumptions are you making? What shoulds are influencing your thinking? What stories are you telling yourself about what's possible or impossible? Remember Maria's words at our next session. For the first time, I feel like I'm not just having thoughts. I'm actually thinking. This is where your journey to clearer thinking begins, with simple awareness. In the next chapter, we'll explore specific techniques for analyzing these thoughts and using them to make better decisions. But for now, focus on developing this foundational awareness. Pay attention to your mental patterns. Notice the stories you tell yourself about your life, your capabilities, and your future. These observations will become the building blocks of your critical thinking practice. Your journey to clearer thinking begins with this simple yet profound shift from having thoughts to thinking thoughts. Welcome to the first step of your transformation. Chapter 2: Breaking Through Mental Barriers. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my desk as I reviewed my notes from that morning session with Alex, a talented software developer who had been stuck in the same role for 8 years. Despite receiving multiple opportunities for advancement, he remained paralyzed by what he called his overthinking problem. "I analyze everything to death," he explained, running his fingers through his already disheveled hair. "Last week, my team leader asked if I wanted to lead a new project. It was a great opportunity, exactly what I've been wanting. But instead of saying yes, I spent 3 days making mental pros and cons lists until the opportunity went to someone else." Alex's situation perfectly illustrates one of the most common misconceptions about critical thinking, that it means analyzing something until you're paralyzed with uncertainty. In reality, effective critical thinking should lead to clearer decisions and more confident action, not decision paralysis. Let me share what happened next with Alex, as it demonstrates the crucial difference between overthinking and critical thinking. "Tell me about the last time you made a decision quickly and felt good about it," I suggested. Alex thought for a moment, then his face brightened. "Last month, when my friend's startup was having a crisis with their database. They called me at midnight, and I jumped right in to help. Spent the whole night fixing it. Didn't even think twice about it. What was different about that situation? I guess I just knew I could help. I understood the problem, had the skills to fix it, and saw a clear path forward." This contrast revealed something crucial about how our minds work. When we have a clear framework for evaluating situations and making decisions, we can act decisively. The problem isn't that we think too much. It's that we often think in circles without a structured approach. Consider Rachel, another client who came to me struggling with her writing career. As a freelance journalist, she had a steady stream of assignments but felt increasingly frustrated with her work. Every article became an exercise in self-doubt, with each sentence being rewritten countless times. During one session, I asked her to walk me through her writing process. She described spending hours researching, making detailed outlines, then getting stuck in what she called the perfection loop, writing and rewriting the first paragraph without moving forward. "What happens when you have a tight deadline?" I asked. "That's the strange thing," she replied. "When I'm really under pressure, I sometimes write my best pieces. It's like the pressure shuts off all the second-guessing." This insight led us to develop what we called the pressure cooker technique. Instead of giving herself unlimited time to write, Rachel began setting artificial deadlines and treating each writing session as if she were on assignment with a strict time limit. The results were remarkable. Not only did she write more efficiently, but her editors noticed an improvement in the quality of her work. The key was not thinking less, but thinking better. Let's break down the components of effective critical thinking versus overthinking. When Alex overthought the project leadership opportunity, his thought process looked like this: "I could fail, but I might succeed. But what if the team doesn't respect me? But it's a great opportunity, but what if I'm not ready?" Each thought led to another without resolution, like a hamster wheel spinning endlessly. In contrast, when he responded to his friend's database crisis, his thinking was structured. Is there a real problem? Yes. Do I have the skills to help? Yes. Are there any major risks? No. Can I take action now? Yes. The difference wasn't in the amount of thinking, but in the structure and purpose of the thought process. I introduced Alex to what I call the decision clarity framework, which we can all use when facing important choices. First, define the actual decision you're facing. Often, we get stuck because we're trying to solve the wrong problem. In Alex's case, he wasn't really deciding whether he could lead a project. He was facing his fear of increased visibility and responsibility. Next, identify what information you truly need to make this decision. We often get trapped gathering more and more information as a way of avoiding decision-making. When Rachel realized she didn't need to read every possible source for a basic news article, her writing process became much more efficient. Then, set clear parameters for your decision-making process. Give yourself a specific time frame and stick to it. This prevents the endless loop of analysis that often masquerades as critical thinking. Finally, connect your decision to action. A decision without action is just a thought exercise. Let me share how this worked with Marina, a small business owner who came to me struggling with expansion decisions. Every time she considered opening a second location, she became overwhelmed with possibilities and potential problems. We applied the decision clarity framework to her situation. First, we clarified that her real decision wasn't about expansion in general, but specifically whether to open a second location in the next 6 months. This immediately made the decision more manageable. Next, we identified the essential information she needed: current business performance metrics, market analysis of the new location, staffing requirements, and financing options. She had been getting lost in endless research about business expansion in general, much of which wasn't relevant to her specific situation. We set a 2-week time frame for gathering this information and making the decision. This prevented the endless what-if spiral that had kept her stuck for months. Finally, we created an action plan that would begin immediately after her decision, regardless of which way she chose. This helped her see that either choice could lead to success if properly executed. The result? Marina made her decision within the 2-week time frame and successfully opened her second location 6 months later. More importantly, she developed a framework for making future business decisions without getting trapped in analysis paralysis. But what about emotional decisions? Critical thinking isn't just for business choices. Consider the case of David, who came to me struggling with relationship decisions. He had been dating someone for 2 years but couldn't decide whether to commit to marriage, despite feeling deeply in love. "Every time I think about proposing, my mind goes into overdrive," he explained. "I start thinking about divorce statistics, wondering if I'm ready, questioning if we're truly compatible." We applied the same principles but adapted them for the emotional nature of the decision. Instead of trying to analyze his way to certainty, an impossible goal in relationships, we focused on identifying his core values and what he wanted in a life partner. Through this process, David realized he was using analysis as a shield against vulnerability. His endless research into relationship statistics was actually a way of avoiding the emotional risk of deeper commitment. This awareness allowed him to shift from overthinking to meaningful reflection about what he truly wanted in life. The breakthrough came when David reframed his question from, "Is this the perfect decision?" to, "Is this a decision I can commit to and work with?" This shift changed everything. 6 months later, he not only proposed, but felt confident in his choice. As we conclude this chapter, remember that the goal of critical thinking isn't to eliminate uncertainty. That's impossible. The goal is to think in ways that lead to clear decisions and confident action, even in the face of uncertainty. Try this exercise tonight. Think of a decision you've been postponing. Apply the decision clarity framework. What exactly are you deciding? What information do you actually need? When will you make this decision? What action will you take once you decide? In the next chapter, we'll explore how to apply these critical thinking skills to understand and challenge our deep-seated beliefs and assumptions. But for now, focus on breaking free from the overthinking trap by giving your thoughts structure and purpose. Remember Alex's words in our final session: "I realized I wasn't really thinking too much. I was thinking without direction." Once I had a framework, decisions became much clearer. Your journey to better thinking continues. Let's move forward with purpose and clarity. Chapter 3: Uncovering Hidden Beliefs. The late autumn wind rattled the windows of my office as Jennifer, a successful pediatrician in her 40s, settled into the familiar leather chair across from my desk. Her usual confident demeanor was notably absent, replaced by an uncertainty that seemed to weigh heavily on her shoulders. "I don't understand what's happening to me," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've always known exactly what I wanted and how to get it. School, medical career, marriage, everything went according to plan. But now," she paused, struggling to find the words, "now I wake up at 3 in the morning wondering if I've been living someone else's life." Jennifer's situation illustrates one of the most challenging aspects of critical thinking: recognizing and examining the hidden beliefs that shape our decisions, often without our awareness. These beliefs act like invisible architects, silently designing the structure of our lives while remaining largely unseen. Let me share how our work together revealed a pattern that's surprisingly common among high achievers. As we explored Jennifer's journey, a story emerged of a young girl who learned early that achievement meant love and approval. Every A on her report card brought her father's rare smile. Every academic award made her mother proud. These experiences created a powerful belief system. Success equals worth. But I am successful, Jennifer protested when I suggested this connection. I have everything I'm supposed to want. That phrase, supposed to want, opened a door to deeper exploration. Through our conversations, Jennifer began to recognize how many of her life choices had been guided by an intricate web of unexamined beliefs. Successful people don't change careers. Taking time for yourself is selfish. If you're not growing, you're failing. Doubt means weakness. These weren't conscious thoughts, but rather underlying assumptions that had become as invisible to her as the air she breathed. Yet they influenced every decision she made, every goal she set, every dream she either pursued or dismissed. This recognition of hidden beliefs often marks a crucial turning point in developing critical thinking skills. Consider Marcus, a talented artist who came to me struggling with a different but related challenge. Despite receiving positive feedback on his work, he couldn't bring himself to show his art publicly or pursue it as more than a hobby. During one session, I asked Marcus to complete a simple exercise. Describe his perfect day without considering practicality or obligations. His response was telling. He became visibly uncomfortable, shifting in his seat and laughing nervously. "This feels silly," he said. "I should be focusing on realistic goals." That word, should, often signals the presence of a hidden belief. As we explored further, Marcus revealed a childhood memory of his mother telling him, "Art is a beautiful hobby, but it's not a real career." This single statement, delivered with love and concern, had evolved into a core belief that limited his choices decades later. The process of uncovering these hidden beliefs requires patience and curiosity. It's like archaeology of the mind, carefully brushing away layers of accumulated assumptions to reveal the foundations beneath. But unlike archaeological artifacts, beliefs aren't static. They can be examined, questioned, and ultimately transformed. Let me share the story of Sophia, a corporate executive who discovered how deeply her beliefs about success had been shaped by her immigrant parents' experiences. During our work together, she realized that her definition of security, a high-paying corporate job, substantial savings, prestigious address, was actually her parents' definition, born from their struggles in a new country. "But isn't financial security important?" she asked during one particularly challenging session. "The question isn't whether it's important," I replied, "but rather, how much security is enough? And what are you sacrificing to maintain it?" This led to a profound realization. Sophia had been operating from a belief that security and fulfillment were mutually exclusive. She could have one or the other, but not both. This either/or thinking had prevented her from considering creative solutions that might offer both. The process of examining our beliefs often reveals these false dichotomies, artificial choices between options that aren't actually mutually exclusive. Jennifer, our pediatrician, discovered she had been operating under the belief that she could either be successful or authentic, but not both. Marcus had assumed he had to choose between financial stability and artistic expression. These beliefs create what I call invisible fences, boundaries in our minds that limit our movement without any physical barrier. Like dogs trained by underground fencing systems, we stop ourselves from crossing lines that exist only in our minds. Breaking free from these invisible fences requires a systematic approach to examining our beliefs. With Jennifer, we developed a practice of belief investigation that anyone can use. First, notice your automatic responses. When Jennifer felt resistance to taking a sabbatical, we explored what beliefs were creating that resistance. What would happen if you took 6 months off? I asked. My practice would suffer. My colleagues would judge me. I'd fall behind. Each of these responses pointed to underlying beliefs about success, worth, and identity. Next, question the origin of these beliefs. Jennifer realized her fear of falling behind stemmed from her father's frequent comparisons between her and her siblings. This awareness didn't immediately change the belief, but it did allow her to see it as learned rather than inherent truth. Then, test the belief against reality. Are successful people really incapable of changing careers? Jennifer began collecting stories of professionals who had made meaningful transitions. Each example challenged her assumption about the impossibility of change. Finally, experiment with alternative beliefs. What if success could be redefined? What if worth wasn't tied to achievement? What if change signaled growth rather than failure? This process led Jennifer to a profound shift in how she viewed her current crisis. Rather than seeing her doubts as a sign of weakness, she began to recognize them as indicators of growth, her mind's way of signaling the need for change. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Like many of us, Jennifer had spent decades building her belief system. Dismantling and reconstructing it required time, patience, and courage. But the results were remarkable. 6 months after our initial session, Jennifer had made several significant changes in her life. She reduced her clinical hours to pursue a long-ignored interest in medical education. She started setting boundaries around her time, discovering that her practice didn't collapse when she took weekends off. Most importantly, she began to recognize the difference between her authentic desires and the goals she had adopted from others. "It's like I've been wearing someone else's prescription glasses all these years," she told me during our final session. "Everything was blurry, but I thought that was just how the world looked." This metaphor perfectly captures how our beliefs shape our perception of reality. Just as glasses affect how we see the physical world, our beliefs influence how we interpret and respond to everything around us. Consider how this played out for Marcus, our artist. As he began examining his beliefs about art and career, he discovered that his definition of real career was surprisingly narrow. Through our work together, he started questioning other assumed truths. Did financial success and artistic integrity have to be in conflict? Was stability only possible through traditional employment? These questions led him to explore alternative approaches to combining his art with financial security. He began offering corporate team-building workshops using art as a medium for creativity and communication. This innovative approach allowed him to merge his artistic talents with business opportunities in a way his old beliefs would never have permitted him to imagine. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to begin your own exploration of hidden beliefs. Notice the shoulds and suppose tests that appear in your thoughts. Pay attention to your automatic responses to new ideas or opportunities. Each reaction is a clue, pointing toward the invisible beliefs shaping your choices. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all beliefs. That would be neither possible nor desirable. Instead, aim to make your beliefs conscious choices rather than unconscious constraints. As Jennifer discovered, awareness itself is transformative. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to create new belief systems that support rather than limit our growth. But for now, focus on the archaeological work of uncovering what's already there. Your mind is territory waiting to be explored, and every discovery brings new possibilities for change and growth. Chapter 4. Building New Mental Models. Rain drummed steadily against the windows as Robert sat across from me, his fingers absently tracing the rim of an untouched coffee cup. At 53, he had just been laid off from his position as a senior marketing executive, a role he'd held for 15 years. But what troubled him wasn't the job loss itself. It was his reaction to it. "I keep waiting to feel devastated," he confessed, "but instead, I feel relieved, almost excited. And that terrifies me more than being unemployed. Shouldn't I be more worried? What's wrong with me?" Robert's confusion perfectly illustrates the disorienting experience of operating under one mental model while another tries to emerge. For years, he had functioned within a traditional career success model: climb the ladder, accumulate achievements, maintain stability. Now, face to face with unexpected change, he was discovering that this model no longer fit his reality, or perhaps never truly had. This chapter explores how we can consciously construct new mental models that better serve our growth and happiness. But first, let me share what happened next with Robert, as it demonstrates the powerful interplay between old and new ways of thinking. When I asked Robert to describe what relief felt like, his whole demeanor shifted. "It's like I can breathe again," he said, sitting up straighter. For years, I've been playing a role, the successful executive, always in control, always knowing what's next. But honestly, I've been bored out of my mind for the last 5 years. I just didn't allow myself to acknowledge it. This acknowledgement marked the beginning of a crucial transition, not just in circumstances, but in how Robert understood success, security, and fulfillment. Like many of us, he had been operating from a mental model inherited from family, society, and early experiences rather than one consciously chosen to support his authentic desires. Consider Emma, a young entrepreneur who came to me struggling with a different kind of transition. Her small wellness coaching business was growing rapidly, but instead of feeling accomplished, she felt increasingly anxious. During our sessions, it became clear that she was trying to force her new venture into an old mental model of what a real business should look like. I keep thinking I need an office, employees, and a 9-to-5 schedule, she explained. But my clients love the flexibility of online sessions, and I do my best work in the evenings. Still, it doesn't feel like a legitimate business. Emma's situation highlights how outdated mental models can create artificial constraints on our success. Her concept of legitimacy was based on industrial-age business models that no longer applied to her digital-era enterprise. Together, we began the delicate work of constructing a new model that aligned with both her values and contemporary realities. The process of building new mental models involves 3 key elements: deconstruction, design, and integration. Let me illustrate through another client's journey. Maya, a successful novelist, came to me when she found herself unable to begin her 3rd book despite a looming deadline. Her first 2 novels had been well received, but now she felt paralyzed by expectations, both external and internal. We began with deconstruction, examining her existing mental model of creativity and success. Maya had internalized a romantic notion of the tortured artist, believing that real creativity emerged from struggle and that success would somehow diminish her artistic authenticity. But look at your evidence, I suggested. Your best writing has come during periods of stability and joy, not turmoil. This simple observation cracked open her assumptions. We spent several sessions documenting when and how she worked best, gradually building a new model of creativity that embraced well-being rather than suffering as a source of inspiration. The design phase involved consciously choosing new beliefs and frameworks. Maya began experimenting with different writing schedules, environments, and approaches. She discovered that contrary to her old belief about needing long, uninterrupted hours to write, she actually produced better work in focused 90-minute sessions interspersed with physical activity. Integration proved the most challenging phase. Maya would sometimes slip back into old patterns, particularly when under pressure. We developed what she called reality checks, simple questions she could ask herself when feeling stuck. Is this current belief serving my creativity? What evidence do I have about when I work best? What would writing feel like if it didn't have to be a struggle? Gradually, her new mental model took root. Not only did she complete her 3rd novel ahead of schedule, but she described the writing process as joyful for the first time in her career. Returning to Robert, our laid-off executive, his journey of building new mental models took an unexpected turn. As we explored his relief about losing his job, a pattern emerged. Throughout his life, he had been most energized by helping others navigate change, something he'd done informally as a mentor and manager, but never considered as a primary focus. But career coaching isn't as prestigious as being a marketing executive, he argued, demonstrating how old mental models resist change. According to whose definition of prestige? I asked. This question led us into a deep exploration of how he defined value, success, and contribution. We discovered that his old mental model was built around external validation, titles, salary, status. His emerging model centered on impact, growth, and personal fulfillment. The transition wasn't smooth. Robert would oscillate between excitement about his new direction and panic about abandoning the security of his old identity. This is normal and even necessary. New mental models must be tested against reality and refined through experience. We developed what I call the model testing protocol, a systematic way to examine and adjust new ways of thinking. First, identify the core assumptions of your new model. Roberts included beliefs like impact is more valuable than title, and security comes from adaptability, not stability. Next, look for evidence that either supports or challenges these assumptions. Robert began collecting stories of people who had successfully transitioned careers later in life. He also started small coaching experiments with former colleagues, gathering real-world feedback about his impact. Then, adjust the model based on experience while maintaining its core values. Robert discovered that while he loved coaching, he also enjoyed consulting on marketing strategy. Rather than seeing these as conflicting paths, his new mental model allowed him to integrate both passions. The power of consciously built mental models became evident 6 months later. Robert had established a small but growing coaching practice while doing selective marketing consulting. His income was lower than in his executive role, but his enthusiasm and sense of purpose were higher than they'd been in years. I realize now that my old model of success was like a beautiful cage, he reflected. It kept me safe but limited. This new way of thinking feels more like a set of wings. This metaphor captures the essential difference between inherited and consciously constructed mental models. The former often prioritize safety and conformity, while the latter emphasize growth and possibility. Consider how this played out for Amanda, a mid-career teacher who had always wanted to write children's books. Her old mental model told her she had to choose between teaching and writing. The new model we developed together showed how these pursuits could enrich each other. Amanda began writing stories inspired by her classroom experiences. Her students became her first test audience, providing immediate feedback that improved both her writing and her teaching. Within 2 years, she had published her first book while becoming a more engaged and creative teacher. The process of building new mental models is ongoing. As our lives evolve and circumstances change, our models must adapt. The key is developing the skills to recognize when old models no longer serve us and the courage to construct new ones that do. As we conclude this chapter, I encourage you to examine your own mental models. What beliefs and frameworks guide your decisions? Which ones did you consciously choose, and which did you inherit? Most importantly, what new models might better support your growth and happiness? In our next chapter, we'll explore how to maintain and adjust these new mental models in the face of challenges and setbacks. But for now, remember Robert's words. The biggest challenge isn't building the new model. It's giving yourself permission to outgrow the old one. Your journey of transformation continues, one belief at a time. Chapter 5. Navigating Resistance and Change. The evening light was fading when Laura walked into my office, her face bearing the tense expression I'd come to recognize as a sign of internal conflict. 6 months earlier, she had made the bold decision to transition from corporate law to environmental advocacy, a change that aligned perfectly with her values, but challenged nearly every aspect of her identity. I thought once I made the decision, everything would fall into place, she said, sinking into the chair. But some days, I wake up wondering if I've made a terrible mistake. Last week, I saw my old colleagues post about making partner, and I felt this wave of, I don't know if it was envy or regret or fear. Maybe all three. Laura's experience illuminates a crucial truth about transformative change. The hardest part often comes after making the initial decision. It's in those quiet moments of doubt, when old patterns of thinking resurface and familiar paths beckon, that our commitment to new ways of thinking faces its greatest tests. Let me share how Laura's journey unfolded, as it perfectly illustrates the challenges and opportunities that arise when we commit to fundamental change. Her story also reveals the subtle ways resistance manifests, not just from external sources, but from within our own minds. During one particularly challenging session, Laura brought up a recurring dream she'd been having. I'm standing in front of a courtroom, but I can't remember any of my legal arguments. The judge keeps asking me why I abandoned my real career, and I have no answer. I wake up in a cold sweat every time. This dream represented the internal struggle many face when departing from conventional paths. Laura's unconscious mind was processing the tension between her new choices and her deeply ingrained definitions of success and worth. Consider also the experience of Marcus, a former client who had successfully transitioned from financial analysis to teaching high school mathematics. 3 months into his new career, he encountered what he called his crisis of confidence. I was teaching logarithms, he recalled, and suddenly thought, who am I to be here? I gave up a six-figure salary to do this. The doubt was so overwhelming, I nearly walked out of the classroom. What saved Marcus from abandoning his new path was a framework we had developed for managing such moments of resistance. Instead of fighting the doubt, he learned to engage with it curiously. When the thought, who am I to be here, arose, he could respond with, who am I not to be? What qualifies anyone to be anywhere? This approach, treating resistance as a dialogue rather than a battle, became crucial in Laura's journey as well. Together, we developed what I call the resistance response protocol, though it's less a formal protocol and more a way of engaging with internal and external challenges to change. The first element involves recognizing resistance in its many forms. For Laura, resistance showed up not just in dreams and moments of doubt, but in subtle sabotage from well-meaning friends and family. Her mother's constant forwarding of legal job postings, her former colleagues' skeptical questions about her new path. These were all forms of resistance she needed to learn to navigate. But aren't they just trying to help? Laura asked during one session. Maybe they see something I'm missing. This question led us to the second element of managing resistance, distinguishing between useful feedback and fear-based resistance. We developed a simple but effective way to evaluate input from others. Does this perspective expand my possibilities or limit them? Does it come from a place of care or fear? Sarah, another client who transitioned from corporate marketing to starting her own sustainable fashion brand, faced similar challenges. Her breakthrough came when she realized that most resistance, both internal and external, stemmed from outdated mental models about security and success. I noticed that whenever someone questioned my decision, Sarah shared, they were usually projecting their own fears and limitations. Once I could see that, it became easier to listen without absorbing their doubt. This insight points to a crucial aspect of navigating change. Understanding that resistance often says more about the source than the target. When Laura's mother kept sending her legal job postings, it reflected her mother's generation's understanding of career security more than any actual assessment of Laura's new path. The third element of managing resistance involves strengthening new neural pathways through consistent action and reflection. Each small success in Laura's new role as an environmental advocate served as evidence supporting her decision. Each challenge she overcame became part of her new narrative of capability and purpose. One particularly powerful moment came when Laura successfully organized her first community action campaign. The project was smaller than the corporate cases she used to handle, but its direct impact on local environmental policy gave her a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced in law. I realized that I had been measuring success with the wrong metrics, she reflected. In law, everything was about billable hours and winning cases. Now I measure success by actual change in the world, by communities empowered to protect their environment. It's a completely different paradigm. This shift in measurement criteria is crucial for sustaining transformative change. Too often, we try to evaluate new paths using old metrics, like trying to measure the temperature with a ruler. Part of navigating resistance involves developing new ways to assess progress and success. Consider Elena, a former executive who left her corporate role to become a wellness coach. Initially, she kept comparing her income to her previous salary, creating unnecessary stress and doubt. Through our work together, she developed new success metrics that included client transformation stories, personal growth, and work-life integration, measures that actually reflected her new values and goals. The interesting thing, Elena noted, is that once I stopped obsessing about matching my old income, my business actually started growing faster. It's like the resistance itself was blocking my progress. This observation highlights another crucial aspect of navigating change. Resistance often creates the very conditions it claims to be protecting us from. When we move from resistance to acceptance, new possibilities emerge. For Laura, this meant learning to embrace the uncertainty of her new path rather than fighting it. Instead of seeing her legal background as something to move away from, she began to view it as a unique strength in her environmental advocacy work. Her understanding of corporate law made her a more effective advocate for environmental policy change. It's not about rejecting my past, she realized. It's about integrating it into my new direction in a way that serves my current purpose. This integration of past and present becomes particularly important when facing what I call identity earthquakes, moments when our sense of self feels fundamentally shaken by change. Tom, a successful surgeon who scaled back his practice to pursue his passion for teaching medical students, described it this way. There were days when I didn't know who I was anymore. Not being in the operating room every day challenged my entire identity as a surgeon. But gradually, I realized I could be both. A surgeon who teaches, a teacher who operates. The categories I thought were fixed turned out to be fluid. This fluidity of identity becomes a powerful tool in navigating resistance. Instead of forcing ourselves to fit into rigid either/or categories, we can embrace the both/and nature of personal evolution. As we conclude this chapter, remember that resistance to change is not a sign of weakness or failure. It's a natural part of the growth process, like the tension a seed feels when pushing through soil toward the light. The key is not to eliminate resistance, but to work with it intelligently. Laura's journey continues, as does yours. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to build sustainable support systems that facilitate long-term transformation. But for now, consider this question. What forms of resistance are actually signposts pointing toward your growth edges? Remember Laura's words from our most recent session. The resistance never completely goes away, but it changes from a wall into a window, something I can look through to see where I still need to grow. Your journey of transformation continues, strengthened rather than weakened by the resistance you meet along the way. Chapter 6. Building Your Support Ecosystem. The first snow of winter was falling outside as Diane sat in my office, tears streaming down her face. At 48, she had finally taken the leap to start her own consulting business after 20 years in corporate training. On paper, everything looked promising. She had savings, a solid business plan, and even a few potential clients. Yet here she was, overwhelmed not by external challenges, but by a profound sense of isolation. I didn't realize how much I relied on my team at work, she confessed, watching the snowflakes dance outside the window. It's not just about the practical support. It's the daily conversations, the shared victories, even the complaints over coffee. Now it's just me, my laptop, and this deafening silence. Diane's experience illuminates a crucial truth about transformation. No meaningful change happens in isolation. While personal growth and critical thinking are internal processes, they require an external ecosystem to flourish. Like a garden needs the right combination of soil, water, sunlight, and nutrients, our personal development needs a carefully cultivated environment of support. Let me share how Diane's journey evolved, as it perfectly illustrates the art of building a sustainable support ecosystem. Her story also reveals how the right support structure can transform seemingly insurmountable challenges into stepping stones for growth. During our early sessions, we mapped out what I call the support spectrum, the different types of support we need for sustainable transformation. For Diane, this began with identifying what she had lost in leaving her corporate role: structured accountability, professional camaraderie, mentorship, and daily intellectual stimulation. But those aren't things I can just replace, she argued. You can't recreate 15 years of workplace relationships overnight. No, I agreed, but you can create new forms of support that serve your current journey even better. Consider Michael, another client who faced similar challenges when transitioning from teaching to writing full-time. His breakthrough came when he stopped trying to replicate his school's support structure and instead designed one specifically for his new path. Michael began by joining a local writers group, but he didn't stop there. He created what he called his Creative Council, a diverse network of supporters who each played a specific role in his development. This included a published author who served as a mentor, a fellow aspiring writer who became his accountability partner, and a former colleague who kept him connected to the teaching world he'd left behind. The key was understanding that no single person or group could provide everything I needed, Michael explained during a follow-up session. Different people serve different purposes in our growth. This insight proved transformative for Diane as well. Together, we began constructing her support ecosystem with intention and purpose. The process revealed that effective support networks typically operate on multiple levels. The first level is what I call ground support, the practical day-to-day encouragement and accountability that keeps us moving forward. For Diane, this began with joining a co-working space where she could work alongside other entrepreneurs. While these weren't deep relationships initially, the simple presence of others pursuing their dreams helped normalize her experience. She met Rebecca there, another former corporate employee turned entrepreneur who became her parallel partner, someone walking a similar path at a similar time. They began meeting weekly to share progress, challenges, and insights. These conversations provided both practical support and emotional validation. The second level involves growth support, relationships that challenge us to expand beyond our comfort zones. James, a successful consultant 10 years ahead of Diane in his journey, became her mentor through a professional association. Their monthly conversations pushed her to think bigger and see possibilities she hadn't considered. James asks questions I wouldn't think to ask myself, Diane shared. He doesn't just validate my ideas. He challenges them, helps me see their blind spots and potential. The third level consists of grounding support, relationships that keep us connected to our authentic selves as we undergo transformation. For Diane, this included maintaining certain friendships from her corporate life, not for professional reasons but for personal continuity. Sarah, another client, discovered the importance of this level when her pursuit of a new career began affecting her personal relationships. I was so focused on building professional connections in my new field that I nearly lost touch with the friends who knew the real me, she recalled. I had to learn that transformation doesn't mean abandoning your roots. It means growing new branches while keeping your core strong. This balance between old and new relationships becomes particularly crucial during major life transitions. Elena, who left a 20-year career in finance to become a therapist, found that her support needs evolved as she progressed through her transformation. In the beginning, I needed people who could validate my decision and help me navigate the practical aspects of career change, Elena explained. But as I progressed in my training, I needed mentors who could guide my professional development, peers who could share the journey, and old friends who could remind me of how far I'd come. Elena's experience highlights another crucial aspect of building support ecosystems. They must be dynamic and adaptable. Different phases of transformation require different types of support. The challenge lies in recognizing when our support needs are changing and adjusting our networks accordingly. For Diane, this meant learning to be proactive about building connections rather than waiting for them to develop naturally as they had in her corporate role. She joined professional organizations, attended industry events, and even started her own monthly meetup for women transitioning to entrepreneurship. The meetup was terrifying at first, she admitted. Who was I to organize something like this? But I realized that by creating the support I needed, I could help others who needed it too. This ripple effect of support became evident as her meetup grew. Women who had attended the early sessions began mentoring newcomers, creating a self-sustaining ecosystem of growth and encouragement. What started as a solution to Diane's isolation evolved into a community resource that enhanced everyone's journey. The process also taught her valuable lessons about the nature of support itself. I used to think support meant having people approve of my choices, she reflected. Now I understand that real support often comes in the form of challenging questions, honest feedback, and sometimes even productive disagreement. This insight points to a crucial distinction between what I call comfort support and growth support. While both have their place, transformation requires a healthy balance between the two. Thomas, a former client who successfully transitioned from engineering to environmental conservation, described it this way. My family provided comfort support. They loved me unconditionally and wanted me to be happy. But my mentor in conservation provided growth support. He pushed me to develop new skills, face my fears, and step into bigger challenges. I needed both to succeed. Building a sustainable support ecosystem also involves learning to be a good supporter for others. Diane discovered that her ability to give support enhanced her ability to receive it. The monthly meetup she created became a two-way street of growth and learning. When I listen to other women's challenges and share my experiences, I often find solutions to my own problems, she noted. It's like the act of supporting others gives me a new perspective on my own journey. As we conclude this chapter, remember that building a support ecosystem is not a one-time task, but an ongoing process of cultivation and refinement. Like a garden, it requires regular attention, occasional pruning, and the addition of new elements as needs change. Consider these questions as you reflect on your own support ecosystem. Who provides your ground support, growth support, and grounding support? Where are the gaps in your current network? What new connections might you need to cultivate for the next phase of your journey? Remember Diane's words from our most recent session. The silence that once terrified me has been replaced by a symphony of support. Some voices challenge me, some comfort me, some simply remind me of who I am and who I'm becoming. Together, they create the perfect environment for growth. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to maintain momentum and navigate setbacks within your support ecosystem. But for now, focus on identifying and strengthening the connections that will sustain your transformation journey. Your path forward doesn't have to be solitary. In fact, it shouldn't be. Chapter 7. Maintaining Momentum Through Storms. The autumn rain beat a steady rhythm against my office window as Peter slumped in his chair, his initial enthusiasm for his new venture noticeably dimmed. 6 months earlier, he had left his position as a corporate accountant to start a financial literacy program for underprivileged youth, a decision that had filled him with purpose and excitement. Now, facing unexpected challenges and what he called reality checks, that initial spark seemed to be flickering. "I knew it wouldn't be easy," he said, his voice barely audible above the rain. "But I didn't expect it to be this hard. Last week, half the students didn't show up for the workshop I spent weeks preparing. The grant I was counting on fell through. And sometimes, I catch myself looking at job postings for accounting positions, wondering if I made a huge mistake." Peter's experience illuminates a universal truth about transformation. The path is rarely linear, and maintaining momentum through difficulties often proves more challenging than making the initial change. His story also reveals how critical thinking skills become particularly crucial during these periods of doubt and setback. Let me share how Peter's journey evolved, as it perfectly illustrates the art of maintaining momentum while navigating life's inevitable storms. During one particularly challenging session, he brought in his journal, filled with entries that tracked his emotional state over the past months. The pattern was clear. His enthusiasm followed a wave-like pattern, with peaks of inspiration followed by valleys of doubt. "It's like being on a roller coaster," he explained. "One success sends me soaring, but each setback feels like it erases all the progress I've made." This observation led us to develop what I now call the momentum mapping approach. Instead of fighting against these natural ebbs and flows, we began to work with them, using critical thinking to understand their patterns and prepare for them strategically. Consider Hannah, another client who faced similar challenges when transitioning from corporate law to starting her own meditation studio. Her first few months were marked by extraordinary success. Classes filled up, clients raved about her teaching, and local magazines featured her studio. Then winter came, attendance dropped, and she found herself questioning everything. "I felt like a fraud," Hannah shared during one session. "Like the initial success was just luck, and now reality was catching up with me." What Hannah was experiencing wasn't failure. It was what I call the reality integration phase, where initial enthusiasm meets genuine challenges. This phase, while uncomfortable, often proves crucial for sustainable success. Together, we developed a framework for maintaining momentum through these challenging periods. The first element involved recognizing that setbacks aren't obstacles to success. They're part of success. Hannah began keeping a lessons learned journal, where she recorded not just what went wrong, but what each challenge taught her about her business, her clients, and herself. When class attendance dropped, rather than seeing it as a failure, she investigated the pattern. Through surveys and conversations with clients, she discovered that the timing of her evening classes conflicted with many parents' dinner routines. This insight led her to adjust her schedule and add early morning classes, ultimately serving her community better. Peter applied similar principles to his financial literacy program. When students didn't show up for his workshop, instead of interpreting it as a rejection of his program, he reached out to understand why. The feedback revealed that transportation was a major barrier for many students. This led to a partnership with a local community center that provided shuttle service, solving not just the attendance problem, but also creating a stronger community connection. What I realized, Peter shared months later, was that these challenges weren't testing whether I should continue. They were teaching me how to continue more effectively. This shift in perspective points to another crucial aspect of maintaining momentum: the ability to reframe setbacks as feedback. Maria, a former marketing executive who started a sustainable fashion brand, described it this way: "In marketing, we never see negative campaign results as failures. They're data points that help us adjust our strategy." I had to learn to apply the same thinking to my new business. Every no from a potential retailer taught me something about my product, my pitch, or my market. Maria's insight led to the development of what I call the setback integration protocol, a systematic way to extract value from challenges. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" she learned to ask, "What is this teaching me? How can I use this information to strengthen my approach?" The protocol proved transformative for Peter as well. When the grant he had counted on fell through, instead of seeing it as a devastating setback, he analyzed why his application had been unsuccessful. This investigation revealed that successful applications typically included more community partnerships and quantifiable impact metrics. Armed with this insight, Peter spent the next 3 months building relationships with local schools and developing better ways to measure his program's effectiveness. When the next grant cycle came around, he not only secured funding, but had created a stronger, more sustainable program in the process. This brings us to another crucial element of maintaining momentum: the importance of celebrating small wins while keeping sight of larger goals. Too often, we focus solely on major milestones, missing the significance of incremental progress. Sandra, a client who transitioned from teaching to educational technology development, created what she called her progress pyramid, a visual representation of both small daily achievements and longer-term goals. Each small win, from a positive user review to a successful bug fix, became a building block in her larger vision. The pyramid helped me see that progress isn't just about big launches or major contracts, Sandra explained. It's about the daily choices and small victories that move me closer to my vision. This balance between daily progress and long-term vision becomes particularly important during what I call plateau periods, times when visible progress seems to slow or stop. These plateaus, while frustrating, often mask important internal development. Consider James, a former sales executive who started a leadership coaching practice. After 6 months of steady growth, he hit what felt like a wall. Client acquisition slowed, and he felt stuck in his development as a coach. "I was ready to give up," he admitted. But when I looked closer at this plateau, I realized I was actually deep in a process of integration, getting better at what I was already doing rather than just adding new things. This recognition of different types of progress, visible and invisible, external and internal, helps maintain momentum through challenging periods. It's about understanding that growth isn't always linear or immediately apparent. For Peter, this meant learning to value the quiet victories. The student who started helping their parents with budgeting, the gradual improvement in his teaching techniques, the deepening of his understanding about financial education's role in social justice. I had to learn that momentum isn't just about moving forward, he reflected. Sometimes it's about deepening your roots so you can grow stronger. As we conclude this chapter, remember that maintaining momentum through challenges isn't about avoiding setbacks or eliminating doubt. It's about developing the critical thinking skills to navigate these experiences productively. Consider these questions as you face your own challenges. What is this setback teaching you? How can you integrate this experience into your greater journey? What small wins might you be overlooking in pursuit of larger goals? Remember Peter's words from our most recent session. The storms haven't stopped coming, but I've learned to sail through them. Each challenge now feels less like a threat and more like an opportunity to strengthen my course. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to leverage these experiences to create lasting change and sustainable success. But for now, focus on building your capacity to maintain momentum through life's inevitable storms. Your journey continues, strengthened rather than weakened by the challenges you face along the way. Chapter 8: Anchoring Lasting Change. The late spring sunset painted my office in hues of gold when Catherine returned for what she called her victory lap session. 1 year earlier, she had sat in the same chair, overwhelmed by the prospect of transforming her small pottery hobby into a sustainable business. Now her ceramic studio was thriving, with a waiting list for classes and a growing online presence. Yet something in her expression suggested this wasn't just a celebration. "I'm successful," she began, turning her coffee cup in her hands. "By every measure I set for myself, I've succeeded. But there's this nagging fear that it could all disappear. Like I'm waiting for someone to reveal it's all been a dream, or for everything to suddenly fall apart. Is this normal? Does the fear ever go away?" Catherine's question cuts to the heart of a crucial truth about transformation. Creating change is one thing. Making it last is another entirely. Her story illuminates the subtle challenges of anchoring success and the critical thinking skills required to build sustainable transformation. Let me share how Catherine's journey evolved, as it perfectly illustrates the art of turning temporary success into lasting change. During our initial work together, she had focused primarily on external metrics, sales figures, class attendance, social media following. While these measures were important, they didn't address the deeper question of sustainability. "I remember when my first class sold out," she recalled. "I should have been ecstatic, but instead, I panicked. What if I couldn't replicate that success? What if I disappointed everyone?" This fear of success, paradoxically, often proves more challenging than the fear of failure. Lisa, another client who successfully transitioned from corporate marketing to running her own wellness coaching practice, described it this way: "When you're striving for something, you have the luxury of imagination. But once you achieve it, reality sets in. You realize success isn't a destination. It's more like a garden that needs constant tending." This insight led to the development of what I call the sustainability framework, a comprehensive approach to anchoring success through critical thinking. The framework begins with a crucial shift in perspective, from seeing success as an achievement to understanding it as a practice. Consider Marcus, a former software engineer who built a successful educational technology startup. His initial focus was on reaching specific milestones: user numbers, revenue targets, market penetration. However, he found that each achieved goal simply led to more pressure and anxiety about maintaining momentum. During our work together, Marcus began to shift his focus from achievement to integration. Instead of asking what's next, he learned to ask what's needed now. This subtle change in questioning led to a more sustainable approach to growth. I realized I was treating my business like a sprint when it needed to be approached like a marathon, Marcus explained. Every time we hit a target, instead of immediately setting a bigger one, we started asking how to strengthen what we built. This principle of integration before expansion became crucial for Catherine as well. When demand for her ceramics classes exceeded capacity, her initial instinct was to immediately expand, take on more space, hire more teachers, offer more classes. Instead, we worked on what I call deep success, strengthening the foundation before building higher. Catherine spent 3 months focusing on systematizing her existing classes, documenting her teaching methods, and deepening relationships with current students. This period of consolidation, while less exciting than expansion, proved crucial for sustainable growth. It felt counterintuitive at first, she admitted, like I was missing opportunities. But this pause allowed me to really understand what made my classes successful, which made later expansion much smoother. This brings us to another crucial aspect of anchoring change: the recognition that sustainable success often requires periods of apparent stagnation. Sarah, who transformed her side gig as a personal chef into a successful meal preparation service, encountered this during her second year of business. "I felt pressured to keep growing, to add new services, to expand to new areas," Sarah shared. "Everyone kept asking what was next. But something in me knew we needed to perfect our current operations before taking on more. This wisdom, knowing when to grow and when to strengthen, comes from developing what I call success intelligence. It's the ability to read the subtle signals that indicate whether expansion or consolidation is needed. For Catherine, this meant learning to distinguish between different types of opportunity. Some opportunities promised immediate growth, but would strain her resources and potentially compromise quality. Others, while less flashy, would strengthen her foundation and support sustainable growth. I started asking different questions, she explained. Not just can I do this, but should I do this now? Does this support what I've already built? This critical thinking approach to opportunity assessment proved transformative. Instead of saying yes to every potential growth avenue, Catherine developed criteria for evaluating opportunities based on their alignment with her core values and long-term vision. The process also revealed another crucial aspect of sustainable success: the importance of building regenerative systems. Too often, we create success structures that deplete us rather than energize us. Consider Amanda, a former corporate trainer who built a successful online education platform. Her initial success came at the cost of working 16-hour days, constantly creating new content, and being available to students around the clock. I had replaced one form of unsustainability with another, she realized. Yes, I was doing work I loved, but I was doing it in a way that would eventually burn me out. Together, we worked on creating what I call success ecosystems, systems that generate energy rather than merely consume it. For Amanda, this meant developing content that could be repurposed, building a team of facilitators, and creating clear boundaries around her availability. Catherine applied similar principles to her ceramic studio. Instead of trying to teach every class herself, she developed a mentorship program where advanced students could become teaching assistants. This not only made her workload more sustainable, but created a pathway for building community and developing future instructors. The studio stopped being just my business and started becoming a living, breathing community, Catherine reflected. That's when I realized true sustainability isn't about maintaining what you've built. It's about creating something that can grow and evolve even without your constant input. This evolution from personal success to community creation marks a crucial transition in anchoring lasting change. It's the difference between building a business and creating a legacy. Mark, who transformed his environmental consulting practice into a movement for corporate sustainability, described it this way: success became sustainable when it stopped being about me and started being about the change I wanted to see in the world. As we conclude this chapter, remember that anchoring lasting change isn't about eliminating uncertainty or guaranteeing permanent success. It's about building robust systems that can adapt and evolve while staying true to core values and vision. Consider these questions as you work to anchor your own changes. Are your success structures sustainable? Do they energize or deplete you? Are you building something that can grow beyond your direct involvement? Remember Catherine's words from our final session. The fear hasn't gone away entirely, but it's changed. I'm no longer afraid of losing what I've built, because I understand that what I've built isn't just a business. It's a way of being, a community, a contribution to something larger than myself. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to leverage these sustainable changes to create broader impact and meaningful legacy. But for now, focus on strengthening the foundations of your success through critical thinking and intentional design. Your journey continues, not toward a final destination, but toward ever-evolving expressions of sustainable success. Chapter 9: Creating Ripples of Impact. The winter sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across my office as David sat forward in his chair, an unusual mix of pride and confusion playing across his face. 3 years ago, he had left his position as a high school chemistry teacher to develop an innovative science education platform. What started as a simple online resource for his own students had grown into a program used by thousands of teachers across the country. Yet something was troubling him. "I never planned for this kind of growth," he admitted, gesturing to the tablet displaying his platform's usage statistics. "I started this wanting to help my students understand chemistry better. Now principals and education boards are asking me about curriculum integration and teacher training programs. It feels overwhelming, like the impact is bigger than I am. How do I handle that responsibility? David's situation perfectly illustrates a phenomenon I've observed repeatedly in successful transformations: the moment when personal change begins to create wider ripples of impact. His story reveals both the opportunities and challenges that arise when our individual growth starts affecting larger systems. Let me share how David's journey evolved, as it demonstrates the delicate balance between expanding impact and maintaining authenticity. During one particularly insight-filled session, he brought up a memory from his teaching days that had suddenly taken on new meaning. "I used to tell my students that chemical reactions never occur in isolation. They always affect their surrounding environment," he recalled. "I'm starting to realize the same is true for personal transformation. Every change we make creates reactions beyond ourselves." This recognition of interconnected impact became crucial as David navigated the expansion of his platform. Consider how this played out when Maria, one of the first teachers to adopt his program, reported unprecedented engagement from previously struggling students. "Her email brought me to tears," David shared. "Not just because her students were succeeding, but because I realized my own struggle to understand chemistry in high school had led me to create something that was now helping others overcome the same challenges." This ripple effect of personal experience transforming into broader impact is something I've witnessed repeatedly in successful transformations. Take Claire, who turned her own recovery from burnout into a revolutionary workplace wellness program. "I started by simply sharing what I had learned during my own healing journey," Claire explained during one of our sessions. "But as more people implemented these practices in their companies, I began seeing changes not just in individual well-being, but in entire organizational cultures." Claire's experience led to what I now call the Impact Expansion Framework, a way of thinking about how personal transformation can thoughtfully grow into systemic change. The framework begins with a crucial understanding: authentic impact grows organically from personal experience rather than being forced or artificially scaled. For David, this meant resisting initial pressure to rapidly expand his platform to cover all science subjects. Instead, he focused on deepening and refining the chemistry curriculum, drawing from his years of classroom experience and student interactions. "I kept hearing that I was leaving money on the table by not expanding to physics and biology," he shared. "But something felt wrong about scaling into areas where I didn't have the same depth of experience and passion." This decision to grow deeper rather than just bigger proved crucial for sustainable impact. By maintaining focus on chemistry education, David's platform developed a depth and authenticity that eventually attracted collaboration opportunities with experienced educators in other fields. The process revealed another vital aspect of creating meaningful impact: the importance of what I call impact intelligence, the ability to discern where and how our unique contributions can best serve others. Consider Sophie, who transformed her personal journey with sustainable living into a community education movement. Initially, she tried to convince everyone to adopt all the environmental practices she had implemented in her own life. "I was coming from a place of passion, but also judgment," Sophie reflected. "I had to learn that lasting impact comes from meeting people where they are, not where I think they should be." This insight led Sophie to develop a more nuanced approach, creating entry points for different levels of environmental commitment. Some community members might start with simple recycling, while others were ready for complete lifestyle transformations. By honoring these different stages of readiness, she actually achieved broader and more sustainable impact. David applied similar principles to his education platform. Rather than assuming all schools could implement his program in the same way, he developed flexible modules that could be adapted to different teaching environments and resource levels. "I realized that true impact isn't about replication, it's about adaptation," he explained. "The goal isn't for everyone to use the platform exactly as I designed it, but for each teacher to make it work for their unique classroom needs." This brings us to another crucial aspect of creating broader impact: the need to build what I call impact ecosystems, networks of relationships and resources that can sustain and amplify positive change. Consider Marcus, who developed a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs based on his own experience building and selling tech startups. Initially, he tried to personally mentor every participant, quickly leading to exhaustion and limited reach. I had to learn that creating lasting impact often means letting go of direct control, Marcus shared. The program really took off when I started training successful participants to become mentors themselves. This principle of cultivating rather than controlling impact proved transformative for David as well. Instead of trying to personally train every teacher using his platform, he developed a community forum where educators could share experiences, adaptations, and success stories. The most innovative uses of the platform often come from teachers I've never met, David noted with pride. They take the basic framework and create something I never would have imagined. This evolution from personal creation to community co-creation marks a crucial transition in expanding impact. It's the difference between being a source of change and becoming a catalyst for collective transformation. Yet this transition often brings its own challenges. Many changemakers struggle with what I call the impact identity crisis, the need to redefine their role as their creation grows beyond their direct influence. Sarah, who developed a revolutionary approach to trauma therapy based on her own healing journey, described this challenge eloquently. There was a point where I had to decide whether my ego's need to control every aspect of the method was more important than the method's potential to help more people. This decision point, between holding tight and letting go, often determines whether a personal transformation can grow into lasting systemic change. For David, it meant shifting from seeing himself as the creator of an education platform to viewing himself as a steward of an evolving educational movement. I still wake up some days amazed by how far this has grown beyond my initial vision, he shared during our most recent session. But I've learned that the most meaningful impact often comes from creating spaces where others can contribute their own wisdom and experience. As we conclude this chapter, remember that creating broader impact isn't about forcing change or controlling outcomes. It's about thoughtfully allowing our personal transformations to create ripples that can touch and transform others. Consider these questions as you think about your own impact. How might your personal experience serve others? What unique contribution are you uniquely positioned to make? How can you create space for others to build upon and expand your initial vision? Remember David's words. The most powerful impact often comes not from what we do alone, but from what we enable others to do. It's about creating possibilities that can grow beyond us. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to maintain authenticity and personal well-being while fostering broader impact. But for now, focus on understanding how your personal transformation might serve as a catalyst for wider positive change. Your journey continues, expanding from personal growth into ripples of meaningful impact that touch and transform others. Chapter 10. Balancing Impact and Authenticity. The spring rain created a gentle backdrop of white noise as Rachel sank into her chair, exhaustion evident in every movement. As the founder of a rapidly growing mental health advocacy platform, she had achieved what many would consider remarkable success. Her organization had helped thousands of people access mental health resources, and her speaking engagements were consistently sold out. Yet the weight in her shoulders spoke of a different story. "I'm living my purpose," she said, her voice barely audible above the rain. "I'm doing exactly what I set out to do, making the difference I wanted to make. So why do I feel like I'm losing myself in the process?" Last week, someone introduced me as the mental health advocate, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I felt like just Rachel. Rachel's experience illuminates a critical challenge faced by many successful changemakers: maintaining personal authenticity and well-being while creating meaningful impact. Her story reveals the delicate balance required between serving others and honoring ourselves. Let me share how Rachel's journey evolved, as it perfectly illustrates the art of remaining true to oneself while expanding one's influence. During our initial work together, she had focused primarily on external impact metrics: numbers of people helped, resources distributed, awareness raised. While these measures were important, they had inadvertently created what I call the impact identity trap. I remember the moment it hit me, Rachel shared during one session. I was giving a presentation about self-care and mental health boundaries, all while running on 4 hours of sleep and answering emails under the podium between slides. The irony was painful. This disconnect between message and lived experience is surprisingly common among those creating positive change. Consider Michael, who built a successful workflow optimization company after recovering from his own burnout experience. His business helped countless organizations create healthier work environments, yet he found himself working 70-hour weeks. I had become so focused on helping others find balance that I completely lost my own, Michael admitted during our work together. It was like I thought I needed to sacrifice my well-being to protect others. This pattern led to the development of what I now call the authentic impact framework, a comprehensive approach to creating change while maintaining personal integrity. The framework begins with a fundamental shift in perspective, seeing personal well-being not as a sacrifice for impact, but as a crucial component of sustainable change. For Rachel, this meant re-examining her definition of successful impact. She had been measuring success by how many hours she spent helping others, rather than by the quality and sustainability of that help. Together, we began exploring what I call regenerative impact, creating positive change in ways that energize rather than deplete us. Consider Sophia, who transformed her experience with sustainable living into a thriving environmental education program. Initially, she tried to personally lead every workshop and respond to every inquiry, quickly leading to exhaustion. I thought being authentic meant being available to everyone all the time, Sophia explained during one of our sessions. I had to learn that authenticity actually means being true to my own needs and limitations. This recognition led Sophia to develop what she called bounded availability, clear structures for when and how she would engage with her community. Rather than diminishing her impact, these boundaries actually enhanced it by ensuring she brought her best self to each interaction. Rachel applied similar principles to her mental health advocacy work. Instead of accepting every speaking engagement and consultation request, she began carefully selecting opportunities that aligned with both her mission and her personal needs. I started asking myself not just, will this help others, but will this help others in a way that's sustainable for me, she shared. It was surprisingly difficult at first. I felt guilty about saying no to people who needed help. This brings us to another crucial aspect of maintaining authenticity while creating impact: the need to differentiate between genuine service and what I call impact addiction, the compulsive need to help others as a way of avoiding our own growth edges. Consider Thomas, who built a successful career coaching practice after his own midlife career change. His ability to help others navigate professional transitions was remarkable, but he eventually realized he was using his clients' transformations as a substitute for addressing his own ongoing development. I was so focused on being the expert, the guide, the person with all the answers, Thomas reflected. I had to learn that continuing to grow myself didn't make me less qualified to help others. It made me more authentic and ultimately more effective. This recognition of the need for ongoing personal growth while serving others became a turning point for Rachel as well. She began integrating her own continued therapy and self-care practices, not just as private activities, but as part of her public narrative. I started sharing not just my past mental health journey, but my current one, she explained. It shifted everything. People responded even more positively when they saw I was still growing, still learning, still human. This authenticity in leadership reveals another vital aspect of sustainable impact: the power of what I call integrated influence, where our external impact naturally flows from our internal growth rather than being forced or performed. Consider Maria, who developed a revolutionary approach to corporate culture based on emotional intelligence. Her initial presentations focused solely on data and best practices, carefully hiding her own ongoing struggles with workplace relationships. I thought I needed to project perfect emotional mastery to be taken seriously, Maria shared. But when I started integrating my own challenges and learning edges into my teaching, the material came alive in a completely different way. This integration of personal truth with professional impact often requires what I call authentic courage, the willingness to be visible in both our strengths and our growth areas. For Rachel, this meant being open about her own mental health maintenance practices, including regular therapy sessions and occasional breaks from public speaking. Rather than diminishing her credibility, this transparency enhanced her impact by modeling real-world mental health management. I realized that by trying to appear perfectly healed, I was actually perpetuating the myth that mental health is a destination rather than a journey, she reflected. Now, I'm showing people what ongoing mental health maintenance really looks like. This shift from performance to authentic presence marks a crucial transition in creating sustainable impact. It's the difference between being a perfect role model and being a real one. Yet this level of authenticity often brings its own challenges. Many changemakers struggle with what I call the vulnerability paradox, the fear that showing our own ongoing growth will diminish our ability to help others. Linda, who built a successful relationship coaching practice after healing from divorce, described this fear eloquently. I worried that if clients knew I still sometimes struggled in my new relationship, they wouldn't trust my guidance. But I discovered that my openness about these challenges actually deepened their trust. This discovery, that authenticity enhances rather than diminishes impact, often comes as a surprise to those creating positive change. For Rachel, it meant reimagining her role not as a perfect mental health advocate, but as a fellow traveler on the mental health journey. I stopped trying to be the person who had all the answers, she shared during our most recent session. Instead, I became someone who could walk alongside others, sharing both what I've learned and what I'm still learning. As we conclude this chapter, remember that maintaining authenticity while creating impact isn't about achieving perfect balance. It's about creating dynamic alignment between who we are and what we offer the world. Consider these questions as you reflect on your own impact journey. How can your ongoing growth enhance rather than diminish your ability to serve others? What boundaries do you need to maintain authentic presence in your work? How might your current challenges become part of your unique contribution? Remember Rachel's words, the most powerful impact doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being real, from showing others that transformation is both possible and ongoing. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to create legacy through sustainable change. But for now, focus on aligning your impact with your authentic self, knowing that your greatest contribution comes not from who you pretend to be, but from who you truly are. Your journey continues, creating impact not despite your humanity, but because of it. Chapter 11. Creating a living legacy. The first hints of dawn were just beginning to color the sky when Samuel arrived for our session, clutching a worn leather journal filled with post-it notes and dog-eared pages. After 25 years of teaching inner-city youth, he had created an educational program that transformed not just student achievement, but entire family trajectories. Now, approaching retirement, he faced what he called his legacy crisis. I keep thinking about all the students who haven't come through our program yet, he said, his voice thick with emotion. All the families we haven't reached. The program works. We have the data, the stories, the transformed lives to prove it. But what happens when I'm gone? How do I ensure this work continues? Samuel's question strikes at the heart of a fundamental challenge faced by successful changemakers: how to transform personal impact into lasting legacy. His story illuminates the delicate process of creating change that outlives its creator. Let me share how Samuel's journey evolved, as it perfectly illustrates the art of legacy building. During our initial work together, he brought out that journal, filled with 2 decades of observations, methodologies, and student stories. But it wasn't until he showed me a recent photo that the true scope of his impact became clear. The photo showed 3 generations: a grandmother who had been one of his first students, her daughter who had also gone through his program, and her granddaughter currently enrolled. Each generation had not just succeeded academically, but had become active in creating educational opportunities for others. I never planned for this kind of generational impact, Samuel admitted. I was just trying to help my students see their own potential. But somewhere along the way, they started helping others see theirs too. This ripple effect of transformation illustrates what I call legacy DNA, the core elements of change that naturally replicate and evolve across generations. Consider Elena, who developed a revolutionary approach to community healthcare after experiencing the gaps in medical access in her own immigrant community. I realized that true legacy isn't just about maintaining a program, Elena shared during our work together. It's about embedding principles so deeply that they become part of how communities think and operate. Elena's insight led to the development of what I now call the Living Legacy Framework, an approach to creating change that becomes self-sustaining and evolutionary. The framework begins with a crucial understanding. Legacy isn't about preservation. It's about creating living systems that can adapt and grow. For Samuel, this meant shifting his focus from documenting his methodologies to nurturing what he called legacy carriers, students and teachers who could not just implement his program, but evolve it to meet changing needs. I used to think my legacy was the program itself, he explained. Now I understand that my real legacy is in the people who will take these principles and create something even better than I could imagine. This recognition led to a fundamental shift in how Samuel approached his final years of active involvement. Instead of trying to perfect and standardize every aspect of the program, he began creating what he called innovation spaces, structured opportunities for teachers and alumni to experiment with and adapt his methods. Consider Marcus, who built a successful urban farming initiative that transformed food access in low-income neighborhoods. His initial impulse was to create detailed manuals and rigid protocols to ensure the program's integrity. I was so focused on maintaining control that I almost killed the very thing that made our work successful. The community's ability to adapt these principles to their specific needs, Marcus reflected during one of our sessions. This tension between preservation and evolution marks a crucial challenge in legacy building. How do we maintain the essence of what works while allowing for necessary change? The answer often lies in what I call principle-centered legacy, focusing on transferring core principles rather than rigid methodologies. Isabella, who developed a groundbreaking approach to conflict resolution in corporate environments, discovered this truth when attempting to scale her work internationally. I was frustrated that facilitators weren't following my process exactly, she shared. Then I realized they were achieving better results by adapting my principles to their cultural contexts. That's when I understood what legacy really means. This insight transformed how Isabella approached training and development. Instead of teaching a fixed methodology, she began focusing on helping practitioners understand the underlying principles that made her approach effective. This shift not only improved results but also enhanced the sustainability of her impact. Samuel applied similar thinking to his educational program. He identified the core principles that drove student success, things like personalized goal setting, family involvement, and peer mentorship, and began teaching these principles rather than prescribing specific methods for implementing them. The amazing thing is, when people truly understand the principles, they often create implementations I never would have thought of, he noted. Every community, every school, every teacher brings their own wisdom to these foundations. This brings us to another crucial aspect of creating lasting legacy: the need to build what I call legacy infrastructure, systems and structures that support ongoing evolution while maintaining core integrity. Consider Rachel, who transformed her personal healing journey into a revolutionary trauma therapy approach. Initially, she tried to personally train every practitioner, creating an obvious bottleneck in the system's growth. I had to learn that legacy isn't about making everyone do things exactly as I do them, Rachel explained. It's about creating systems that allow others to learn, grow, and innovate while maintaining the essential elements that make the work effective. This understanding led Rachel to develop a unique training approach that combined clear core principles with structured space for practitioner innovation. She created what she called learning laboratories, where trained therapists could experiment with adapting her methods while receiving supervision and support. For Samuel, building legacy infrastructure meant creating multiple pathways for program participation and leadership. He developed a system where students could progress from participant to peer mentor to program leader, each step adding their own insights and innovations to the program's evolution. The most beautiful moments are when I see former students taking these principles and creating something completely new, he shared. One alumni started a parent education program I never would have thought of, but it perfectly extends our impact into the community. This organic evolution of impact reveals another vital aspect of lasting legacy: the power of what I call legacy communities, networks of people who carry and evolve the work through their own authentic engagement with its principles. Maya, who pioneered a transformative approach to environmental education, described this phenomenon eloquently. True legacy isn't passed down like a torch that might go out. It's more like a fire that spreads, with each new person adding their own fuel and creating their own light. As we conclude this chapter, remember that creating lasting legacy isn't about controlling the future. It's about nurturing the seeds of change that can grow in ways we might never imagine. Consider these questions as you think about your own legacy. What core principles drive your impact? How can you create systems that allow others to authentically engage with and evolve these principles? What would it look like to trust your work to grow beyond your original vision? Remember Samuel's words from our final session. I used to think legacy was about ensuring everything stayed the same after I was gone. Now I understand it's about creating something that can grow and change while keeping its soul intact. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to navigate the emotional journey of letting our work evolve beyond our direct control. But for now, focus on understanding how your impact can become a living legacy that grows and adapts through the authentic engagement of others. Your journey continues, not toward a fixed destination, but toward creating lasting change that can evolve and flourish through generations to come. Chapter 12. The Art of Letting Go. Golden afternoon light filtered through the windows as Grace settled into her chair, her fingers absently tracing the edge of a thick portfolio. For 15 years, she had built and led a revolutionary arts therapy program for trauma survivors. Her methods had been adopted by hospitals across the country, and her training programs had a 2-year waiting list. Yet today, she wasn't here to discuss expansion or success. She was grappling with a more personal challenge. Last week, I watched one of my former students lead a workshop. She began, her voice catching slightly. She was brilliant. She took my basic framework and added elements I never would have thought of. The participants were transformed, and I felt, I don't know how to describe it, proud, but also afraid, irrelevant. How do you handle watching your life's work evolve beyond your original vision? Grace's question touches on one of the most profound challenges faced by successful changemakers: the emotional journey of letting our work evolve beyond our direct control. Her story illuminates the complex interplay between pride and loss, vision and surrender that marks true legacy building. Let me share how Grace's journey unfolded, as it perfectly illustrates the delicate process of emotional release that accompanies lasting impact. During one particularly poignant session, she brought out her portfolio, 15 years of workshop designs, participant testimonials, and methodology notes. Sometimes I feel like I'm holding onto these papers as if they're my identity, she admitted. As if letting the work evolve means losing who I am. This fear of identity loss is surprisingly common among successful innovators. Consider Marcus, who developed a groundbreaking approach to sustainable architecture. His designs had transformed urban development, but he struggled watching younger architects adapt and modify his methods. Every time someone changed one of my design principles, it felt like they were changing me, Marcus shared during our work together. I had to learn that my worth wasn't tied to maintaining control over my ideas. This insight led to the development of what I call the Identity Evolution Framework, an approach to separating our sense of self from the work we create. The framework begins with a crucial recognition. Our value lies not in controlling our creation, but in having the courage to let it grow. For Grace, this meant examining her deep attachment to specific aspects of her methodology. We discovered that her resistance to change often centered around elements that reflected her personal healing journey rather than what best served current participants. I realized I was protecting my own story more than the program's effectiveness, she reflected. When I could separate those two things, I could see how others' innovations actually honored my original vision by making it more accessible to different experiences. This separation of personal story from public impact reveals another vital aspect of letting go: the need to distinguish between what I call legacy essence and legacy expression. The essence is the core truth or principle that makes our work transformative. The expression is how that truth manifests in different contexts. Consider Sophia, who pioneered a revolutionary approach to environmental education in urban communities. Initially, she insisted every program follow her exact curriculum. down to the specific plants used in demonstrations. I was so focused on maintaining control that I missed the point, Sophia shared during our sessions. The power wasn't in the specific plants. It was in the principle of connecting people with nature in their immediate environment. Once I understood that, I could appreciate how others adapted the work to their local ecosystems. This recognition transformed how Sophia approached program development. Instead of trying to standardize every detail, she focused on articulating the core principles that made her approach effective. This shift not only reduced her stress, but actually enhanced the program's impact as it spread to different environments. Grace encountered a similar revelation when she began examining her emotional resistance to change. She discovered that her deepest fear wasn't about others changing her methods. It was about losing her connection to the transformative moments that had inspired her work. I had this moment where I realized my personal healing story would always be part of the program's DNA, she explained. But that didn't mean every facilitator needed to follow my exact path to create healing for others. This brings us to another crucial aspect of emotional legacy building: the need to develop what I call legacy trust, faith in the wisdom of those who carry our work forward. This trust isn't blind. It's based on recognizing that different perspectives can enrich rather than dilute our impact. Consider Thomas, who developed an innovative approach to youth mentorship after his own experience as a troubled teen. His program had transformed thousands of lives, but he struggled watching mentors adapt his methods to serve different populations. I kept thinking, they don't understand these kids like I do, Thomas admitted during our work together. Then I realized they understand their kids in ways I never could. My experience was just one path to connection, not the only path. This recognition led Thomas to create what he called wisdom circles, regular gatherings where mentors could share their adaptations and innovations. Instead of trying to maintain control, he focused on creating spaces where collective wisdom could emerge. For Grace, building legacy trust meant learning to see herself as part of a larger evolutionary process rather than its sole architect. She began hosting monthly innovation laboratories where practitioners could experiment with new applications of her methods. The first few sessions were terrifying, she recalled. Every deviation from my approach felt like a personal rejection. But gradually, I started seeing the beauty in how others interpreted and expanded upon my work. This shift from control to curiosity marks a crucial transition in the emotional journey of legacy building. It's the difference between seeing our work as a fixed creation and viewing it as a living entity that grows through collective wisdom. Yet this transition often brings its own emotional challenges. Many changemakers struggle with what I call the legacy paradox, the recognition that our work's greatest impact might come through changes we never envisioned. Maria, who transformed her experience with chronic illness into a revolutionary wellness program, described this challenge eloquently. I had to learn that true legacy isn't about preserving my methods exactly as I created them. It's about trusting others to carry the essence of healing forward in ways that serve their communities. As we conclude this chapter, remember that the emotional journey of letting go isn't about abandoning our vision. It's about allowing it to evolve and grow through the wisdom of others. Consider these questions as you navigate your own process of release. What aspects of your work do you hold most tightly? What fears arise when you imagine others adapting your methods? How might letting go actually enhance rather than diminish your impact? Remember Grace's words from our most recent session. I used to think letting go meant losing my connection to the work. Now I understand that letting go allows me to connect with something even bigger. The collective wisdom that emerges when we trust others to carry our vision forward in their own authentic ways. In our final chapter, we'll explore how to maintain personal fulfillment while watching our work evolve beyond our original vision. But for now, focus on understanding that true legacy requires both the courage to create and the wisdom to let go. Your journey continues, not toward perfect control, but toward trusting in the wisdom of collective evolution. Chapter 13: Finding Joy in Evolution. The morning light painted soft shadows across my office as Elizabeth sat in her familiar spot, but something was different about her presence today. After 30 years as a pioneering environmental educator, She had recently passed leadership of her organization to a new generation. Yet rather than displaying the uncertainty many feel in such transitions, she radiated a quiet contentment that caught my attention. "You know what surprised me most?" she began, smiling as she watched a hummingbird hover near the window. "I thought stepping back would feel like an ending. Instead, it feels like I've been given a gift, the gift of watching something I created take on a life of its own. It's like being a parent watching your child become their own person. There's this wonderful mix of pride, wonder, and curiosity about what comes next." Elizabeth's perspective illuminates a profound truth about lasting impact. True fulfillment often comes not from maintaining control, but from embracing the joy of evolution. Her story reveals how personal satisfaction can actually deepen when we allow our work to grow beyond our original vision. Let me share how Elizabeth's journey unfolded, as it perfectly illustrates the art of finding fulfillment in release. During one particularly insightful session, she brought in a series of photographs spanning 3 decades of her organization's history. "Look at this," she said, pointing to an early image of her first environmental education program. "I used to think success meant replicating this exact model everywhere. Now I see these young educators taking our core principles and creating programs I never could have imagined. And somehow, that feels more fulfilling than if they just copied my approach." This shift from control to appreciation marks what I call the fulfillment paradox. The discovery that our deepest satisfaction often comes from letting go rather than holding on. Consider Marcus, who developed a revolutionary approach to urban farming in disadvantaged communities. "I spent years perfecting my methodology," Marcus shared during our work together. "But the most exciting moments now come from watching others adapt it in ways I never considered." Last month, one of our youth participants combined our farming techniques with his grandmother's traditional growing methods. The results were extraordinary. This openness to unexpected evolution led to what I now call the joy of discovery framework, an approach to finding personal fulfillment in the ongoing development of our work. The framework begins with a crucial shift in perspective, seeing ourselves not as owners of our ideas, but as catalysts for continuous innovation. For Elizabeth, this meant redefining her role from primary creator to wisdom keeper. Instead of directing every aspect of her organization's growth, she began focusing on mentoring the next generation of environmental leaders, sharing the stories and insights gained from her years of experience while remaining open to new approaches. "I realize my value isn't in controlling the organization's future," she explained. "It's in providing the context and understanding that helps others innovate effectively. When I stopped trying to be the source of all solutions, I started enjoying being part of a larger creative process." This recognition of our evolving role reveals another vital aspect of maintaining fulfillment: the need to develop what I call legacy joy, the ability to find genuine pleasure in watching others build upon and transform our work. Consider Sophia, who pioneered a transformative approach to trauma therapy after her own healing journey. Initially, she struggled watching other therapists modify her methods, but gradually discovered a deeper satisfaction in their innovations. "There was this moment when I watched a former student combine my approach with traditional indigenous healing practices," Sophia recalled during our sessions. "The integration was beautiful, far more powerful than my original method for that community. I felt this surge of joy, realizing my work had become a seed for something greater than I could have created alone." This discovery of joy in evolution often requires what I call fulfillment flexibility, the ability to find satisfaction in unexpected manifestations of our vision. Sarah, who created an innovative literacy program for adult learners, experienced this shift during a surprising moment of revelation. "I was observing a class taught by one of our new instructors," Sarah shared. "She was using methods that seemed to contradict everything I developed. My first instinct was to intervene, to correct her approach. But then I saw the students' faces. They were engaged, understanding, transforming. That's when I realized my attachment to specific methods was actually smaller than my commitment to the ultimate goal of literacy empowerment." For Elizabeth, This flexibility manifested in her response to a major program shift initiated by her successor. The new leadership team had proposed integrating digital technology into their nature education programs, an approach that initially seemed at odds with Elizabeth's emphasis on direct nature contact. My first reaction was resistance, she admitted. But then I watched how they used technology to extend the impact of our work. Students were using apps to identify plants, track wildlife patterns, and share their discoveries with peers around the world. They weren't replacing nature connection. They were amplifying it in ways I hadn't imagined possible. This ability to find joy in unexpected evolution points to another crucial aspect of lasting fulfillment, what I call legacy learning. The recognition that our work can continue to teach us even as it grows beyond our direct control. Consider James, who developed a groundbreaking approach to youth mentorship. 20 years into his program's success, he found himself learning from the very innovations he initially resisted. I was watching a mentorship session led by someone who had modified my approach to work with autistic teens, James explained. The adaptations they made were so insightful that I found myself taking notes. Here I was, the program's founder, learning new dimensions of my own work from someone who had transformed it. And surprisingly, that felt wonderful. This openness to continuing education reveals a powerful truth about sustainable fulfillment. It often comes not from being the perpetual teacher, but from maintaining a learner's mind even as we share our wisdom. Elizabeth embraced this principle by creating what she called wisdom exchange circles, regular gatherings where veteran educators and new innovators could share insights as equals. These sessions became a source of ongoing inspiration and fulfillment for everyone involved. In our last circle, a young educator shared how she'd adapted our watershed education program for urban communities. Elizabeth recalled, her eyes brightening. She had discovered ways to help city kids connect with hidden water systems that I had never considered. Watching her eyes light up as she described her methods, seeing the pride she took in building on our foundation, it filled me with a joy I hadn't expected. This joy in others' success marks another vital aspect of lasting fulfillment. The development of what I call legacy heart, the capacity to find personal satisfaction in collective achievement rather than individual recognition. Consider Marina, who pioneered an innovative approach to community healthcare. After decades of leading her organization, she found her greatest satisfaction came from watching others take ownership of the work. There was this moment at our annual conference, Marina shared, when I realized I didn't know half the innovations being presented. Our work had grown in directions I never imagined, and instead of feeling threatened or irrelevant, I felt this profound sense of rightness. This was exactly what I had hoped for, even if I hadn't known it at the time. For Elizabeth, this heart-centered fulfillment emerged in unexpected ways. She found joy not just in the successful programs, but in the small moments of transformation. Watching a new educator discover their own teaching style, seeing participants make the work their own, witnessing the ripple effects in communities she had never directly served. Last month, I received a letter from a former student who now leads environmental programs in another country, she shared. She wrote about how she'd adapted our principles to serve her community's unique needs. Attached was a photo of her students engaged in watershed protection work. Their methods were different from ours, but their eyes held the same light of discovery I'd always hoped to inspire. That letter brought me to tears, happy tears. As we conclude this final chapter, remember that true fulfillment in legacy work often comes not from maintaining perfect control, but from embracing the joy of continuous evolution. Your impact grows not despite letting go, but because of it. Consider these questions as you navigate your own journey of lasting fulfillment. How might releasing control actually enhance your satisfaction? What unexpected joys might await in the evolution of your work? How can you maintain a learner's heart even as you share your wisdom? Remember Elizabeth's words from our final session. I used to think my legacy was about preserving what I had created. Now I understand that the real legacy is in creating space for continuous creation. My fulfillment comes not from holding tight to my vision, but from watching it transform and grow through the hearts and minds of others. Your journey continues, not toward a final destination, but toward ever-expanding circles of impact and joy. In this evolution lies the deepest fulfillment, the knowledge that what you've created has taken on a life of its own, touching lives and inspiring changes you never could have imagined. Let us move now to our epilogue, where we'll weave together the threads of this journey and look toward the continuing adventure of growth, impact, and lasting fulfillment. Epilogue, the continuing journey. The seasons had turned full circle since our journey began. Outside my office window, the same cherry tree that had shed its blossoms in our opening chapter was now budding anew, a living reminder that every ending contains the seeds of new beginnings. As I sat reflecting on the stories and transformations we've explored together, a familiar face appeared at my door. It was Claire, whose story opened our first chapter. A year had passed since she sat in that chair, grappling with the uncertainty of transformation. Now she stood in the doorway, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I brought you something," she said, settling into her familiar spot. "It's my journal from this past year. I thought you might want to share it with others just beginning their journey." She paused, a gentle smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I found your first note in it yesterday. Trust the process." I had no idea then what that really meant. Her gesture perfectly captures the spirit of our exploration together through these pages. Like Claire's journal, this book isn't just a collection of strategies or success stories. It's a testament to the profound journey of transformation that becomes possible when we apply critical thinking to our deepest questions and aspirations. Throughout our chapters, we've walked alongside individuals facing the crucial moments that define a life's direction. We've witnessed David's evolution from frustrated chemistry teacher to educational innovator, Sarah's journey from corporate executive to community changemaker, and Marcus's transformation from urban farmer to movement builder. Each of their stories, while unique, illuminates universal truths about the nature of meaningful change. They remind us that transformation isn't a single moment of decision, but a continuous process of growth, adaptation, and renewal. They show us that critical thinking, far from being a cold, analytical tool, can be a pathway to our most authentic and impactful lives. "You know what I understand now that I couldn't grasp a year ago?" Claire continued, running her fingers along the worn edges of her journal. "Critical thinking isn't about having all the answers. It's about learning to ask better questions, about staying curious especially when we think we know the way forward." This insight echoes through every story we've shared. Remember Elena, who discovered that her greatest breakthrough in community healthcare came not from having the perfect plan, but from learning to question her assumptions about what communities really needed. Or Thomas, whose youth mentorship program transformed when he started asking not just, "How can I help these kids?" but "How can I empower them to help each other?" Their experiences remind us that critical thinking at its best is not just a mental exercise, but a way of being in the world, curious, open, and alive to possibility. It's about developing what we might call wisdom in action, the ability to navigate complexity while staying true to our deepest values and aspirations. As I look back through my notes from the countless sessions and stories that formed this book, certain themes emerge like threads weaving through a tapestry. We've seen how personal transformation often catalyzes broader change, how individual growth ripples outward to touch families, organizations, and communities. We've witnessed the power of questioning not just our thoughts, but our ways of thinking, of examining not just our choices, but the frameworks through which we make those choices. We've explored how critical thinking can help us navigate the tension between vision and reality, between holding on and letting go, between leading change and allowing it to evolve beyond our control. The funny thing is, Claire reflected, I thought critical thinking would make everything clearer, more certain. Instead, it taught me to be comfortable with uncertainty, to find strength in not knowing all the answers. That's where the real growth happened. Her observation points to perhaps the most important lesson these pages contain. That true critical thinking isn't about eliminating uncertainty, but about learning to move forward thoughtfully within it. It's about developing the wisdom to know when to analyze and when to act, when to plan and when to trust, when to lead and when to learn. As our journey together through these pages comes to a close, I'm reminded of words shared by Samuel, the education innovator whose story appeared in our chapter on legacy. The best moments in my work now come not from having all the answers, but from watching others discover their own answers, their own ways forward. That's the real gift of critical thinking. It empowers others to think critically too. This, perhaps, is the deepest promise of the journey we've explored together. Critical thinking, thoughtfully applied to our life's questions, becomes not just a tool for personal growth, but a gift we give to others. It creates ripples of possibility that extend far beyond our immediate influence. As you close this book and continue your own journey of growth and impact, remember that the stories we've shared are not just about others. They're mirrors reflecting your own potential for meaningful transformation. The same capacities for critical thinking, thoughtful action, and authentic impact exist within you. Consider Claire's final words from our session. A year ago, I thought I was starting a journey toward having everything figured out. Now I realize I was beginning a lifetime of figuring things out, of staying curious, of continuous learning and growth. And somehow, that feels more exciting than having all the answers ever could. Let these words guide you as you move forward. Remember that your journey of critical thinking and personal transformation is uniquely yours, yet connected to the broader human story of growth, impact, and meaningful change. The cherry tree outside my window will continue its cycle of blooming and renewal. May your journey likewise be one of continuous growth and flowering, guided by critical thinking but enriched by wisdom, empowered by knowledge but enlivened by wonder. The path ahead is yours to discover, one thoughtful step at a time.